Um, let's see if Mr. Innovation is here. Is Mr. Innovation here?
Present.
Mr. Innovation, how are you?
Hey Josh, how you doing?
Good. Do you want a water?
No, I'm good. I have one outside.
Excellent. First, congratulations on your wedding anniversary.
Oh, thank you. You saw that.
Yes.
Now, what do you have to say to me? Did you see it was our 38th wedding anniversary?
38th?
In a state obsessed with the number 38. You know, we've talked about this, right? You know, it's all about number 38.
And did you give your wife $75 million?
No, she could go out shopping, but no. No.
Right, in honor of that, I just want to tell you on our credit card on the Amex this month, there's going to be $75 million worth of expenditure.
No, but I giggled at our 38th anniversary during a time where it seems like number 38 keeps popping up all over the place. Right? Well, it did in our case.
No, you do have to question anybody who's asking for public money that either uses the number 38 or 75.
It's pretty funny.
But it keeps happening over and over again.
Pretty funny.
So, strategy.
Uh-oh. Strategy?
Yeah, strategy.
What kind of question is that?
Yeah, what is, so it's hard to get someplace.
If you don't know where you're going?
If you don't know where you're going. And,
Yeah.
you know, the ultimate taskmaster that you know, virtually I've ever seen was Bruce Sunland.
Yeah.
And Bruce Sunland was about three things.
Right.
He really didn't care about anything else. I'll leave out the bloody details, but it was about a convention center, an airport, and fixing the state's budget.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's all he ever
And he
talked
stuck
about.
to it.
And he stuck to it, and he, having been in cabinet meetings, would lambaste anybody who wasted his time talking about some other issue of lesser importance.
You have to stay focused on it, right? It makes me giggle, right? I mean, remember that old Jim Mora, quote, playoffs. What are you talking about playoffs? Well, same thing. I mean, strategy. You want to talk about strategy? I mean, I'll be happy if we can get through the next few weeks and close out the General Assembly session, right? Which always scares me to death of what's going to happen. And you should be able to look at the priorities and the bills that are coming up, and you should be able to discern what is the strategy, what are the things that are important,
right?
What are we trying to do? And I think we do what I call set strategy one tactic at a time. I mean, the world is like that, right? All we care about are the tactics and the tactics that are important to me. What's the program I want, right? As opposed to where are we trying to get to as a state, and can we actually align the programs, the allocation of resources? Could I see in the budget some kind of strategic direction, like this is where we're going?
Right.
And we never seem to do that. We're always putting out fires, and so it's trying to say we have a strategy after the fact, looking at what we actually did, and then saying, see, this is what our strategy was, as opposed to what you just described. This is our strategy, and let's get everybody aligned to that and focus in and concentrate our activities and resources on that. Maybe we'll get something done that way.
So, I'll throw out a couple of them, and you can certainly make the argument that they point in opposite directions, right? We're going to cut the car tax, so here's a kind of old school conservative, we're going to cut a tax, and then on the flip side, we're talking about giving money to people to pay for college.
Yeah, well, as far
a new
as,
social program.
And both of those, and we've talked about this before, there's nothing wrong with them on the surface of this is a program.
Sure.
Tell me what that program's kind of aligned to. So
Yeah.
if it's a strategic priority, and we're trying to decrease our tax rates, across the board, and every year we're going to, take a whack at one, the next one, and our business climate's going to improve, over time.
Right.
But what we do is we seem to take shots, randomly.
Right.
This year it's this, and then the next year it's something else, and so we never do anything where you can string two tactics together and say, you know what, we're making progress.
Yeah, that's right.
Instead, what we do is create.
Well, it's part of it. We're so far behind. We're looking for immediate gratification, and when we don't realize immediate gratification, we abandon the strategy. I mean, say what you want about 38 Studios. It was a long ball Hail Mary to the end zone, hoping and praying that this former baseball player was going to make this company become the next EA Sports or
And
something.
the strategy was a fine, strategy to, increase the number of companies that are in the digital media
Yeah.
space.
Sure.
Trying to increase the number of cool startups that
Yeah.
are producing higher wage jobs. I mean, so I like that strategy. I wish we would stay with that strategy over a long period of time. But then what we did tactically made absolutely no sense there. The specific deal we did, made absolutely no sense. And look what it's created. For
Incenting
us.
them to burn through their cash as fast as they
No, it's
possibly could.
no, I totally agree with that.
Lack of strategy is a problem. And now, one of the reasons, I think it was under Governor Almond, we went to a 4-year cycle for the general officers, was to try and depoliticize things and allow whoever was in power to govern and to put the best policies in.
Right.
And we are not through our 3rd year of the governor. And based on Go Locals headlines for the past week and what looks like the next week's going to be, we are already in the midst of a throwdown gubernatorial.
We're back into election mode, and everybody's pointing at everybody else, and you can't have any kind of strategy discussion. In government, we call it policy.
Yeah.
It's not strategy because that's a business term.
Yeah.
Right? In government, it's the policy. It's a set of policies. But you tell me. Right, what I see is it's all hinges on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
We don't seem to set much policy. I saw today. I knew we hadn't done much this year, but 4 public bills over the course of the session. I mean, really? That's insane. That we would have that little productivity of our legislative.
I think there was a Mother's Day resolution in there.
All those resolutions, to drive up the number. But I don't give us very high grades for setting policy. We know how to do deals. We know how to do transactions. We know how to react to political pressure, right? But do we actually know how to set a policy that we're going to stay with for a number of years, God forbid, beyond a single political cycle, and actually over time accomplish that objective, which will move the state forward? I don't think we're really good at setting policy. We're much better at the transactional piece.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of the things we do transactionally all relate to the budget. That's the whole ballgame up there.
Yeah.
I mean, who up there actually cares that they only passed 4 bills?
Yeah.
The whole ballgame up there is the budget.
Right.
And what's in or out of the budget, and now because the budget is so tight,
Right.
we're all waiting, for what's going to get cut. Right, I heard language that said, we could reduce the car tax because that money's coming from somewhere else. That's nonsense.
Yeah, right.
Right, it comes from, there's a bucket of money that you have to deploy, and of course.
Bolivia comes from somewhere else.
If we're gonna have less tax revenue,
Right.
In our operating budget, guess what? We have to do less of something else,
Right.
right?
Let's shift. One of our favorite subjects always to talk about is the terrible, saddening plight of the poor people at Uber.
You saw my email this morning, obviously.
Talk about a guy who's got a strategy.
Yeah.
In all fairness, no one is more visionary,
That's right.
aggressive,
Yeah, that's
take
right.
no prisoners, literally,
Yeah.
and has created, in a relatively short period of time, one of the greatest companies in the world.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
That's
and now in a bit of. It's hard to tell if it's in business chaos or just PR chaos.
Oh, I think it's in business chaos because I think it affects their stock price. And when you have the board of directors
Yeah.
doing what they're doing this week, I
Yeah.
haven't heard what the resolution is.
Right.
But usually when you start to see things in the press, that say they're working on solutions, that include, putting Travis Kalanick, the CEO, in a timeout chair in the corner for
Yeah.
3 months.
Right.
There are problems going on at Uber. And just for the record, did you go back and look at the tapes of our previous conversation?
Correct.
Do we even have tapes?
We do.
I love it. The tapes.
Yeah, we have the tapes.
Well, I recall a conversation where you asked me this question, and I said, I don't think he's going to survive, because
Yeah.
I think we live in a different time right now, where this nonsense that Uber, I don't care how cool their business idea, I don't care what their net worth is, I don't even care what a great service they offer.
Yeah.
Right? You can't get away with that kind of behaviors that are condoned from the top down into the management ranks. Like, you just can't get away with that now, and I would not be surprised. Maybe they'll sit him out for 3 months, but I think that damage is done. I would not be surprised if he leaves, and I said so. You said no. You said no, he's gonna survive. You still think so?
Yeah, he may take a brief step aside from a PR standpoint, but I also have a feeling it's kind of like when the manager gets thrown out of the game and he goes and stands in the dugout, walkway,
and watches the game
and watches the
manages from the dugout
and manages from over there.
Yeah, no, that could be too.
What happens to companies, especially Steve Jobs' Apple won.
Right.
He did get bounced, but the company had stagnated and lost sales and was losing market share. This is a company that the big payoff, the IPO, has not transformed yet.
Yeah.
And so,
but there was a time not too long ago where if you created the kind of wealth that Uber has for so many shareholders, right, so many pension funds, so many large institutional and private investors, right, you could behave any way you wanted.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, the bad boy behavior and the worse you were, the more you got articles written about you,
right,
and the better the company did. No more.
Yeah.
This crosses the line, and you cannot get away with it. And
is that when you changed the name from Bad Boy Innovation Factory to Business Innovation Factory?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that rebranding.
There you go.
Yeah. The other big business CEO, which has some potential implications to Rhode Island, is Jeff Immelt at GE, and 16 years, a fairly stagnant stock performance for 16 years, despite being one of the 10, Fortune 500 top 10 companies in the United States. Has some implications to Rhode Island, not dramatic, but from a PR standpoint, I think it's been something that the governor's talked a lot about, which is 85 jobs in their digital practice being located over in the former Providence Journal building. What's your takeaway on the GE?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not as negative on Immelt's run.
Yeah.
Not so easy to follow. Jack Welch. I think he's had a good run. He's got the Queen Mary. This is a big company.
320,000 global employees.
So if you think about a company that large, and you know that you need to go from an industrial company to a company that is more digital than it is industrial, that simple idea is no easy feat. And I believe he's positioned GE that way. I think they've made some very bold moves. I think that the jury's still out, but I think GE has done a nicer job than some other companies, large companies have.
Yep.
You look at the challenges that are sitting at IBM,
right?
Romney. I give him better grades right now. He's turning the Queen Mary. They're making digital funding. In fact, their investment here in Rhode Island attaches to that strategy.
Yep.
They're hiring people and changing their services. They've gone all in on the Internet of Things.
Yep.
How do we connect everything, including your coffee cup, to the Internet?
Yep.
To make it a smarter coffee cup.
Yep.
They are all in on that strategy, changing their skills, changing their products and services. I think they're going to be positioned successfully, which is no small feat when you're a company that big.
Yep. But their big investor, Triad, who owns whatever it is, 4.9, whatever that, big piece of that company, says, hey, listen, we want dividends and we want higher stock performance.
Yeah.
So that's nice, but it has not done as quickly as we demand it to be.
Well, this is the argument, for the companies that have created enormous wealth faster are the companies that didn't have the old baggage, right? They didn't have to turn the Queen Mary and 300,000+ employees. They could create it more from scratch. So that's why Uber is worth what it is, and Airbnb. These companies could just focus on the innovation and assembling the parts and their capabilities in a way that is much much harder to do if you're a GE. Now, I wouldn't count out the GEs of the world, but you're right. If you're an
Yeah.
investor, trying to keep your investors happy, with that versus what you make if you had invested all the money, in one of those companies like a Facebook. Or,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And this
Right.
is the challenge. That's why Apple has all the capital.
Yeah.
Because as long as they continue to invent. But look, but talk about Apple. They're now the big behemoth.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
now it's harder and harder, for them to figure out what's next. Do you know how much you have to grow? I mean, you go to a business that size
Right.
where if you can't create a $10 billion business, a new $10 billion business every year, you're falling behind. And it's incredible
No, it's
what you have to
unbelievable.
do at that scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to work with Gore-Tex and
Yeah.
their parent company, WL Gore, and they have about 10,000 different SKUs, almost 3,000 different businesses within, and everything from the #1 replacement vascular
Yeah.
to the coat you're going to wear to the best
Right.
dental floss, all over the place. A million, and their goal was that a new product needed to hit $5 million in 2 years.
Before
in
it was
sales.
even interesting to them.
It was a non-starter if you couldn't demonstrate that it
Right.
would get to $5 million in 2 years.
Right, and that's
So-
a challenge. No, Gore happens to be a company. It's the case study we look at for how do you constantly innovate and
Yeah.
put new products and
Right.
services on. But when you start to get to where you got to make those big numbers with every SKU,
Yeah, right.
Are you ruling out the potential disruptive new business model?
Yeah.
Right, that might take a little bit longer, to be able to get to the big value. And so this is the innovation challenge, right? If you're about innovation, it's not about what you did yesterday, it's about what you're going to do next. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's not just create the next product, that's 5 billion, or greater. Sometimes it's what's the new business model, and you've got to give it the room to establish before you can predict it, and that's the problem, right? You couldn't have predicted how big Uber was going to be,
No.
or how big Airbnb was. We just had the founders here in Rhode
Yeah,
Island,
absolutely.
who told that story.
Yeah.
And Joe Gebbia, at the chamber luncheon,
Yeah.
said what I've been saying all along. They didn't invent anything. They had a problem they were trying to solve. They took a customer-centered approach to it. They played with the parts and capabilities to do it. And next thing you know, they're sitting on Airbnb. You couldn't have done a spreadsheet. You couldn't have predicted it.
There's a great diagram of their success
Yeah.
path, right? And I think it's like 3 years of nothing.
Right.
Right? Like they couldn't get out of first gear. They couldn't get into first gear.
Right.
And then they finally had some huge macro breakthrough on revenue where they got $500 in a week.
And it was a big deal for them.
It was a huge
Yeah.
deal for them.
Yeah, because this is what they do. They keep iterating until they get it right.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you're a big company like a GE
Yeah.
or Gore, where the only projects that get approved are the ones that you can create the spreadsheet for to
Yeah.
predict what the revenue is going to be.
Right.
Right. Then you never do those types of explorations.
Yeah.
The way the guys at Airbnb did it, and look what they created.
Yeah.
So my message to them, those big guys, is you're always going to look for the incremental new product.
Yeah.
Right, but you better create the space where you could explore and not hold those teams accountable to the spreadsheet, because you've got to do a lot of experiments to get to that new business model or way to change value, at the customer level. And that's how all of these exciting companies like Uber and Airbnb were created. Because if you looked at how they started, right, and you tried to predict what they were going to be, you would have been wrong.
Yeah.
You would have been completely wrong. But yet now they disrupt entire industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing before you head out, BIF's coming up in
Yep.
about 90 days.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any big signings in the past couple
Oh,
of weeks?
yeah, well,
Any-
we got a couple.
Let's
A
hear.
couple more that we're working on. That
Working
we haven't,
on. Let's
that we
close
haven't,
these
We haven't
deals.
closed yet, but I don't.
Are you a little bit like a college head coach? Is it kind of there a little bit of, are you a little bit like John Calipari and you're offering the mother-in-law, the mother?
Oh,
house
no.
and The kid
They,
ends
they
up with
want to speak at the BIF summit. Yes, you know that. But we're just talking with Walt Mossberg, who
Yeah.
is,
And he's coming.
And he's been on this long retirement path, right? I
Oh,
love
my
it.
God, he's
If you
been
follow him
retiring
on
for like
social
5
media,
years.
He's been retired, well, over the last 6 months,
No,
he's
it's-
really been retiring in a very public way. But it's so fantastic. He had such a big impact on the technology journey that we've all experienced.
Yeah,
The consumer
absolutely.
tech business. So
He
we're
is
excited he's
really
gonna
the
be there.
Rosetta Stone of communicating technology to personal technology.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what he was able to do.
He wrote the column. He tells the
Yeah.
he tells the story of how they gave him permission at the Wall Street Journal to write his personal tech column.
Yeah.
And how he convinced them to do it, because like all innovators,
Yeah.
they didn't want to do it.
No.
What are you talking about? Nobody's interested in that. And he convinced them to try it.
Yeah.
And he kept at it, and it took off, and he built it into not only an amazing, kind of thing for the Wall Street Journal, but then when he went off and did Recode and the Recode
Yeah.
conference, as you see, he had Hillary Clinton there.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
No,
everyone
he's
sits
been-
in those chairs at his.
He's been hitting the ball out of the park
at his
lately.
conference. So I'm excited to have him come back home to Rhode Island, and be part of the summit. We're in the final kind of planning stages for it. It's a great time because people from all over, not just the country, we get people globally.
Yep.
Now that came to this. I just saw a group of 8 people from Australia. I always scratch my head and say, how do they find out about this
Yeah,
from
right.
Australia? I can't get people next door.
Well, let me just
Right.
well, let me tell you. So last week, Pasta Beach is on, and they have a place in Newport, a place
Yeah.
in Boston, and the place in Providence. They're expanding the one in Newport. Rick Simone, who hosts that
Right.
restaurant show, gets hit by the young guy who's the
Okay.
son who's helped manages the company, and says, "Oh, we got hit from a friend of ours in Russia who saw it
Right.
on Go Local Live, and somebody in Miami, and somebody." And to your point,
This is
or
how it
Tom
works.
Friedman's, the world is so flat right now.
Well,
that
you can, if you are noisy and you put your stuff out there
Yeah.
in polished way, you just put it out there.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people find it. It's
Listen, Monday we had on one of the top security experts in London, talking about the attacks of that weekend. On Tuesday, Kate Nagel got the leading French journalist on within 5 hours of the attack at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And we also had on John MacArthur, the publisher of Harper's Magazine. All in a 24-hour period.
It's amazing when you're like I've been experimenting with this for a long time, so I leave a lot of digital crumbs, as
Yeah.
you know out there.
Right.
It's easy to figure out
Absolutely.
what I'm doing. So everything we do, including we're in Newport this weekend, of course we get the emails and
Yeah.
kind of messages. A lot of them happy anniversary, but a few of them are like, you came to Newport and you didn't say hello. Like what's the matter with you?
Well, I want to thank you so much. Again, everybody, thanks for tuning in on Monday. A big week, all week. We've got the New England Revolution that we're teaming up with. They'll be playing over at Providence College on Wednesday. Would you rather have a New England Revolution stadium in Rhode Island or a Pawtucket Red Sox new stadium? Quick.
Well, they
You
can't
gotta pick
share
one.
they can't share a
No,
stadium?
they can't. You
No?
pick one.
No, the dimensions are not good. I'm sticking with the plus sign.
You're sticking with the old school. Saul
Yeah.
Kaplan goes old